Hey, what's going on, fam? Welcome to the Get the Bag podcast, episode 13.
What's
13.
up?
Lucky
What's up?
13. What's
I
going on?
know. I love it.
We're back from I'm back from LA. Awesome trip to connect with Tim and everybody. Dennis last week. It was a
Mm-hmm.
great time.
That
May
was
have
good
to make
vibes.
this a monthly visit.
I know. I know. We did some networking and everything. It was packed. A little tour of LA a little bit
Yeah,
too. So
definitely. Appreciate you being my tour guide while I was out there. That was really fun. Got to tour some houses too. Really, really good stuff. But yeah, today's topic, there's no guest this week. It's just gonna be me and Tim.
that's it.
But we'll kind of be talking about, and this kind of conversations we've had actually the last couple times is like people come up with business ideas all the time but kind of don't know where to start, or
Mm-hmm.
because they've previously failed, had a previous business that failed. They kind of lose confidence to keep pushing and kind of plugging in mentality as well. So guys, if you have any questions, feel free to post it throughout the our conversation. And if you have any suggestions as far as like what kind of topics you want us to cover, like also feel free to add it in the comments or the chat. We're here for you guys. We're here to add value. So without further ado, I think I think this is a pretty big thing, is coming up with ideas and
Mm-hmm.
like chatting about um ideas that you have. So how many actual ideas, Tim, have you come up with versus like actually executed?
Man, I can't even name them. I mean, um, I used to think of these ideas and then forget them, and then all of a sudden I would just write them down.
Mm,
And then now I started on my Mac. I just pull up my notes and then I just write them down. Even if it's a different idea on the existing business or how to expand the business or bring in more revenue. So I just kind of jot them down to see if it's something that, um, one makes sense. Two, I think I can execute, or do I need more education on it and see how I can, implement it or even get it started, right?
mm, nice. Yeah, for me, I think my mentality wasn't always there. Like even growing up, I feel like I probably did come up with really good ideas. I just, because I had no knowledge of like where to even get started, it was really intimidating. I thought I had to be at a certain level to
Hmm.
even be worthy of creating a business. I had no idea how simple it was. It really is simple. And setting it up, it's just kind of, it was maybe more of you know, my mentality that was, or my mindset that was telling myself like, no, it's
Hmm.
too risky, or things like
Hmm.
that. So for me, I think I've definitely even moved now as we're kind of
Hmm.
starting this real estate business. um some opportunities have come up, and it just naturally does when you kind of switch your mindset.
Hmm.
Even like this podcast, or we're looking into getting into multifamilies
Right.
as well. So I feel like when you put yourself in these positions, you'll kind of um see this kind of happening, where opportunities just kind of show up because you're more aware
Right.
of the
Right.
situation.
And I think also with, the mindset of actually starting a business, like you said, could be like, I don't think I can do that, because
Right.
when you are working for somebody, you see this kind of the scale at where they're at, and you're like, it's a little intimidating because you think that's going to be the case when you start the business, right? And
Right.
it's really not. It's just the beginning, right? It's a startup, and there's going to be some long hours. I mean, you think you work long hours for your job, your 9 to 5, but
Right.
you're kind of always on when you're an entrepreneur. And we talk about this all the time with work life balance, right? Especially
Mhm.
being an entrepreneur. But I think people wanting to start a business don't realize that the time commitment and hard work that needs to go into every day. Because instead of one aspect when you're working for a job, you have to put on different hats as an entrepreneur and starting a business. So,
Right. And I think it varies. Some people are built for it, and other people it takes
hmm
some time.
hmm
Just kind of having the expectation, like, yeah, you will be having to work, make a lot, tons of hours, especially if you have a 9 to 5, like maybe before and after. I think the saying is like, you you work your 9 to 5, or your 9 to 5 funds your business, or you're kind of investing in yourself,
hmm
but with the funds from your 9 to 5, and you're kind of working after your 9 to 5, you're kind of working on your future, right? You're kind of
hmm
working on building.
right.
Um, and so I think it varies. Um, I think ultimately when you kind of have a business, you want to eventually detach, and that's kind of another thing too. But um, for me, my experience, I mean, I've only started one business so far, or actually, where the podcast is another venture,
hmm
and then
Yep.
also the multifamily
hmm
um kind of company we're eventually going to start up. Um and I've had ideas too. I've had like VA, I thought like
mm,
possibly doing a VA, but then I was like, okay, do I really have an interest in that?
right.
And I think that's also really important, is having some form of passion behind it, or some form of
Right.
motivation. There's a thing in my at my company that we started at my 9 to 5, where we call it vested interest.
hmm
And something where sometimes these things come up, or another department comes up, and because I'm part of product, so we're always
Okay.
being asked like, hey, when's the next feature coming out, when's the next feature? And it's really difficult because we're working on other things. So before, in the past, if it was brought up to us, we would stop what we were doing to focus on what was brought up.
hmm
But now the CEO is like, if there's no vested interest from the party that's they're requesting something, then just say no. Like,
mm,
you more better work is created when there's a vested interest. When there's an interest party, that's when you go all in. And also, the
right.
person requesting it, you have to learn how to pitch it too. So you have
Mm,
to inspire somebody. So I think you have to have some form of vested interest when you start a business. You can't just do it just because
right.
somebody else is doing it. Because I
hmm
feel like social media, especially nowadays, they shove it down our throats, like, start a business, which yes, you should, but like, don't just start just to start it.
Right.
Kind of
Right.
have some passion behind that. Otherwise,
Absolutely.
you're kind of going in and like, all right, well, now what do I do?
hmm
You're a little lost.
No, I agree with that because all the businesses I have started has been, passion, but it's all around. I th- Now that I realize is, it's all about helping people and
Mhm.
then solving a problem too. So all my businesses have been geared towards that, right? And my background is from a marketing background, so I
Mhm.
did a lot of like website design and marketing material and brochures and all that stuff back in the day. And that was kind of the first business that I started with a business partner, and I would do all the designs and websites, and then he would do sales, right? And then
Mhm.
the day-to-day business. But I loved what I was doing. Like I loved the design aspect of it, and then providing, businesses with websites when websites were kind of new at the time, right?
Right.
And but I always had like the passion for like design and being creative, and because as a kid I would draw a lot, like draw
Mhm.
like comic book stuff and all of that. So that's where the creative side came in with me, right? So um and to be able to do that on a computer and provide, information, but also a cool kind of look that nobody else has seen, right? So it's different
Mhm.
from everybody else. But now, it's like everybody wants to put up the website pretty fast, where there's different tools now that can do that, right?
Well,
And
eventually that's what
yeah,
happens is like it
yeah,
gets specialized.
mhm,
Like there's I think it's important, yeah, to identify like, okay, where especially if you have a specific niche or niche,
right,
like there's always going to be a need, but eventually once it gets caught on, like they streamlines it or
mhm,
centralize it with like, proper software. Somebody comes up with the idea because they find a need or they run into a hurdle
mhm,
performing some form of task.
mhm,
I mean, look at real estate. I hear about people even 5 years ago were like, oh, we didn't have PropStream, or maybe PropStream was like in its infancy stage. Um, they didn't really have a way to comp, like they had
right,
to use Zillow or and
mhm,
then you think about other forms of communicate, like a CRM, for example. It was only Podio. Now there's
mhm,
a variety of CRMs. So no matter what industry you're in, I feel like it's constantly going to be um, revolutionizing like some form. If you run into a hurdle or have trouble doing something, somebody's going to come up with a business idea to perform. I don't know how long it'll last, but
right,
I think it's good to kind of catch it before there's like a wave of people
mhm,
coming up with sort of ideas.
yeah. I mean, there's like, not to scare anybody off from starting a business, but there are statistics that, there's a high percentage of people that will fail in the first year, right, of their business. And I think it's up to 90% that first
Yeah.
year. And then within 5 years, it's 50% of that, right? So it's pretty high, but if you um, stay consistent. Like we always say, that's like been a theme of almost all of our podcasts is right. Is
Hmm.
like stay consistent, and then enjoy what you do. All this other stuff may take a little bit longer, but you'll get it. I mean, you'll overcome things. You'll learn. You'll fail in different things, but
Hmm.
you'll do it. Like one of the businesses I started was, a new technology. It was like a self-deodorizing gym bag, right? So
Hmm.
um, it had never been made before. So we were like, how are we going to do this? Or, so the first part was just research. I had to research the technology, what kind of technology we're going to use for the gym bag. The gym bag probably was the easiest part. It's the
Hmm.
technology part, how we're going to put it in the gym bag. We had to hire a bag designer to help us with that. And then, the technology already existed, but we wanted to make it mobile and portable, right?
Hmm.
So, um, I mean, small and portable. So it would be, it's a situation where, you just had to just research and find a manufacturer that could actually make your design. And then we did it, and we had a proof of concept, and we had a prototype and everything. So, it may seem daunting, and I think startups do this all the time, like with apps or, they're trying to make something that hasn't been made yet, but that's not
Right.
stopping them from actually pursuing that startup, right? They have this
Right.
idea, they want to make that idea come to fruition, and and try to make something out of that, right? And make a business or out of that, and get funded or self fund or whatever they can do to actually make it successful.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think it starts with an idea and kind of seeing it through fruition. I mean, like I said, my only my first real business venture, if we're talking like, was probably when I was like in sixth grade. We had a project.
Hey, that counts.
uh,
That counts.
right? Yeah, we had a project where it's like if you could invent something, um, and then you have to present it like
Hmm.
where you had to kind of write up like a thesis or some form of documentation of like or maybe proof of concept, like how will this work. And I think initially I didn't really understand the assignment. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna create this cleaning
Hmm.
stuff like to help. I forgot even like what it was. Yeah, I'm gonna
Hmm.
mix these chemicals, and my teacher was like, all right, you may have to think something else because I'm not going to have you mixing chemicals and stuff like that for cleaning supplies.
That's
So
funny.
she was just like, think of something that you're really passionate about, that you love. What sort of things do you think if you created, it would help? And so I came up with a fabulous idea of teaching you how to shoot a basketball.
Oh, cool.
And I made it out of cardboard. So I had like a guy, basically like a player stand
Mhm.
up, and like the elbow was like hinged so you can kind of do this.
Oh, that's cool.
And
That's
it,
creative. That's awesome.
yeah, I just kind of like literally carved out a cardboard. I mean, I was like what, 11 or
Yeah.
something, but my main thing was like people don't know how to shoot a
Still
basketball, so
don't.
kind of showing them the right. So I mean, there's probably better stuff now, but
Right,
like
right.
that was kind of like my first stab at like just thinking outside the box, and I think that's really is as an entrepreneur,
Mhm.
is thinking outside of the box, putting yourself kind of out there. And I think people talk themselves out a lot. If
Mhm.
you've worked at a startup, which I do, you wear
Mhm.
different hats already, so you're kind
Yeah.
of in that environment of
Mhm.
going from like task to task, different priorities coming up. I mean, that's really being an entrepreneur, is like you have your ups and downs. There's some days that are chill, that are like, oh, okay, cool. I don't have to put out any fires, but there's days where it's like, okay, I'm on red alert literally the whole
Mhm.
day, and it can be a
Mm.
little stressful. So, um, I think there, especially since the pandemic, I think there has been an influx of more entrepreneurs. But
Right.
like you said, the first year, 90% have failed. I mean, how many people do we know in the U that, started maybe around the time we did, that no
Mhm.
longer are in the group because either, of course, family stuff comes up or personal
Sure.
things
Mhm.
come up, but like also, it just maybe got too hard, too
Mhm.
overwhelming,
Mhm.
where they're like, hey, I thought I was going to get a deal after a month or after a couple
Mhm.
months, and they don't see results. Instead of kind of picking those, um, the reasons why, or maybe understanding what's
Sure.
stopping them, they're like, oh, it's easier to just go back to what I was doing. And I think that's
Yeah.
what many people go through.
I think it that happens in everything that you're trying to start, and, um, I think the failure part, they feel like it's a failure, which is not. Like, you think you're not
That's
getting
how
a
you learn.
deal.
You
Yeah,
wanna
that's how
fail
you
as
learn.
quickly as possible.
Quickly as possible, because that's when you're going to get closer to that win, or get closer to finishing that particular project that will get you that win, right? So
Mhm.
I think people do quit early when they know, um, when they don't have to, right?
Mm.
And just trusting themselves. Yeah, there's a process, and you're not sure, especially as an entrepreneur, not sure if the direction that you're going is the right direction, but you believe it's the right direction because of all of your experience and knowledge on
Mhm.
that. But sometimes you do have to pivot, and then some people, instead of pivoting, they stop, and
Right.
that's they should pivot and then move forward, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's, and people in, just like if you're at a job and something comes up, you have to find a solution for that. It's just the
Right.
same way. You're not going to just stop your work, right? You're going
Right.
to try to solve that issue and then move on to another task when you're done, or whatever the case may be, or tackle both tasks at the same time.
Mhm.
So I think, they have to take that same mentality, um, from your job to your business as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like what you said where, you having to pivot, um, and kind of work on stuff. I mean, things are gonna come up all the time, no matter what, like I was saying. But I think just going back to like the vested interest, like you're going to things are gonna come up either way, so you have to kind of decide. And if I backtrack a little bit,
Mhm,
mentality as
mhm,
well. If
mhm,
I'm gonna come in with a shitty mentality, of like, well, yeah, I don't know, this may go out well, or like,
Right.
no, you have to be locked in,
Mhm.
um, and know like, hey, I may not know what I don't know, but
Mhm.
I'm a figure it out. And like you said, people don't pivot.
Mhm.
They stop where they're at, and they go back, or they just
Mhm.
fall off,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
instead of, like you said, like adjusting, because being on entrepreneur, at least for me, is has been adjusting,
Yeah.
understanding, looking at like, okay, evaluating myself either every month or every quarter, to be like, okay,
Mhm.
what went well, what didn't go well, what could I do differently, because you don't want to wait until the end of the year, which people typically wait,
Yeah, they do.
till December 31st to be like, "Oh, man, like, I could have done this differently," and then they come up with New Year's resolutions, and then they fall off too. So you
Mhm.
have to, it's all constant iteration, when it comes to that.
Right. And, like, I think one of our questions was, like, what's the goal of starting a business, right? And I guess you have to realize is, like, what is your core goal of why do you want to start the business? Like, my question to you is, why did you start the real estate business, G? For you.
Yeah. Well, it was a little bit of money too.
Mhm.
I mean, also, I mean, we all wanna,
Yes.
I think that everybody, let's not play ourselves, like,
Nope.
be thinking ourselves like, "Oh, yeah, I'm gonna change the world." And, like, I wanted to get paid, like,
Mhm.
nobody, not my job or anything, pays me what I'm worth, like,
Right.
and
Right.
and that's something, I've been reading this book. We should all be millionaires. Everyone should become a millionaire, or something like that. By, I think her
Mhm.
name is Rachel Rogers,
Mhm.
and she talks about, like, especially as women, we talk ourselves out of so much, and we
Mm.
leave so much money on the table.
Mm.
And I think that's why people go into entrepreneurship, is like, well, I can finally get paid what I'm worth, or pay myself what I'm worth, um, because for me, I thought like, "Oh, I'm making 6 figures. That's
Mhm.
I don't know if I'm worth that." It's like that,
Mm.
in, what's it called? Syndrome, it'll come to
Imposter.
mind, but
Okay.
imposter syndrome. Yeah,
Yep, imposter.
exactly,
Yep.
where you kind of talk yourself out. You don't think you're worthy of that.
Mhm.
And I've gone through that, especially in times in my 9 to 5, where I feel like I failed, or I dropped the ball, or just things didn't
Mhm.
go the way I expected them to go. And
Right.
then you start talking yourself like, "Oh, man, this is why I'm not worth this," or "This is why
Mhm.
that." And it's, women, it's like ingrained, because society has always said, women, like, you see in the media, like, women, compared to men, is totally off, like,
Right, right.
in
The
terms of like,
disparity, yeah.
right, when it comes to, like, women, like, we're having to really break out of that mindset. So once
Mm.
you're able to break out of that, I mean, the possibilities are endless,
Right, right.
and not have that society, um, kind of take
Wait,
away
yeah,
from
yeah.
that, you know?
Mhm.
So I joined, yeah, for money, of course, because I knew I want some bigger. I always envisioned myself like, because I always been the underdog. I'm quiet,
Mhm.
even like growing up. I was like so quiet. People thought like I didn't speak.
Oh, wow.
That's how shy I was.
Yeah.
I just stood out. I was the only brown girl in like a whole white class. So
Mhm.
it's like I was just like,
Right, right.
I feel off, like something's wrong here.
Right, right, yeah.
And I just didn't feel like as comfortable. So I didn't really feel comfortable talking. So I was always had that underdog, like, oh, she's not worth that. Like, or
Mhm.
she's gonna have some trouble, growing up, some, trouble learning, disabilities or something.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I always knew, I was like, I'm special in some way, or form. Like,
Mhm.
I can off there's so much I can offer. And even hearing my coworkers be like, doing content, like, "Oh, I never saw that side of you." It's like,
Mhm.
I always knew that, but
Right.
maybe I never projected it out, because
Mhm.
I mean, it's my 9 to 5, whatever. Like,
Right.
I don't have time to like show you like
All aspects of myself. I can show you
right,
my work
right.
aspect. Right, right, right.
But I knew I wanted to create something bigger than me, and I
Mhm.
knew, an industry like real estate that gives me the power. And that's also something going back to that book I mentioned earlier. And like, you can't you can't really do much if you don't have money. Like you can't make a dent in this world if you don't have money. You need money
Yeah.
to make moves. I believe in there's so many like organizations out there that are making a
Yeah.
difference. Or we talk about when a national disaster, we have this war on Ukraine,
Mhm.
and if I wanted to, I can't really make a difference right now. Like what, $50 a month?
Yeah,
Like, we
exactly,
think
right.
like, oh, or even like, oh, like, yeah, I'm donating $100 a month. That's nothing. You have
Mhm.
people donating millions. And
Millions,
when we
yeah.
talk about like legislation and,
Yeah.
making like actual moves where, you're creating
Mhm.
laws or you're helping create laws or uh, helping remove laws,
Right.
like you can't do that if you don't have money. So
Yeah.
for me, I was thinking always like the long term of like the life I wanted to live. And it
Mhm.
wasn't what I was doing. I mean, sure, if I was complacent and making six figure, be happy with making six figures, like, and some people are, where there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm like, I knew I was meant to do something more than what I'm doing right now. I can make
Yeah.
a bigger impact doing what I'm doing. Here I am on a podcast, like sharing value.
Sure,
So
sure.
that's a reason why I created it. But yeah, I want to get paid.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's cool. I mean, I love that aspect of course, it always comes down to, yes, we started this business because we want to make money, right? But money is not the number one driver, right?
Right.
It is maybe the starting driver that helps us push us to get to where we want to go into getting into the starting blocks, and then having that education or that knowledge to actually push forward when the race starts.
Mm.
Then and then when once the race starts, it's like, you know people think it's a sprint. It's not a sprint, it's a long
Say
distance.
all the time, it's a
Yeah,
marathon.
it is a marathon. So there's strategy that goes into running that marathon. So I think you have a your long-term goals within being a successful business, right? And I think that's one of the biggest keys of understanding your goals. And if you understand where you want to be or what you want to do at a certain point of success within your company, I think that is going to be a huge driver in you not giving up and you continuing and you pivoting. And because the ultimate goal is that you have that sense of you want to make a difference, especially in the communities you feel like are unrepresented, or organizations that are unrepresented, and you
Mhm.
want to provide financing for them. You want to provide knowledge to them, value, all of that, and it starts from you making that decision that you want to start this business, make a difference, and make money to show those differences, right? Or provide help in those organizations or programs, right? So I think
Yeah,
that's pretty
absolutely.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I think I didn't know how I was gonna get there, but I knew like where I wanted to be. And I think that's where people also drop the ball is they think they have to have it all figured out as soon as they start the LLC.
Yeah.
Like we
Yeah.
talk about all the time, right? Like, don't worry about getting the LLC to begin with. I did just because
I
I
did
was like,
too.
I don't want no problems. Like, I'm in California. Like, I at least want to have that set up. But I didn't create a website. I didn't have business cards. Like that's the least of your thing. But I think people think like when they think, oh, you're creating a business, you have to
Mhm.
have X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
No, I mean, get the legals, create your LLC, sure, and then figure it out as you go.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the main aspect. But like for you, what I know you've created a few businesses, but what
hmm
had you start your real estate business?
Yeah, money is always the motivator. Like, I agree with you 100% on that. So money was the number one motivator. I always wanted to get into real estate. You know, I had read Rich Dad Poor Dad a while ago, and um, I just felt like, you know, I think I was trapped in everybody else's trap, and like
Mm,
I didn't know how to get started in real estate. But it's funny because I started these other businesses, and I just never started real estate until like that motivation of, you know, your back is against the wall, you know, what are you gonna do? And you know, you learn from these other businesses, and, you know, you could get into another business like that, but I just took the plunge in real estate, and, you know, having someone like Chris as your coach and mentor, and I
mhm,
resonated with him because he had a couple failed businesses. And I was
right.
like, wow, like he failed at 2 businesses and still made it back. You know, he made it back one time, he made it back another time, right? So,
Mhm,
and real estate helped him do that. So I was like, that was like my trigger, like, okay, you know, we have something in common, and I want to be able to be successful like him. So I'm just going to learn as much as I can from him and emulate his success, but in my own way, in my own direction, right? Because he, you know, lays out the blueprint, but as long as you follow that, you know, you can. Um, Move off your blueprint, but, you know, and focus on different areas of real estate. But as long as you keep consistent with, you know, at least the wholesaling side, you'll be good, right?
yeah,
But as I got into real estate, my motivation kind of changed a little bit because I was seeing how it really read it, you know, there was always news about it. I've seen experienced some people, um, you know, within the Black and Brown community experience, you know, how hard it is in real estate, especially to get a house and get financing for a house. But I
right.
really didn't know how bad it was when you're actually in the trenches
The
and talk,
industry,
yeah,
yeah,
in the industry, when you're starting to talk to people, you're starting to network with people, you're starting to get in these rooms with people, and that just made me realize like I want to actually try to make a difference
right,
in that community and provide affordable housing for people within their community where they're trying to get pushed out because of new complexes and higher rents, right?
right.
So that's kind of my goal had shifted from that because I didn't. My goal was motivation of money, and then when I got into it, I was like, wow, like there is something that is there that I think I can make a difference in within the real estate industry. And
I
so
love
that's
that.
kind of where my motivation kind of went in regards to that. And that's where that passion came from of like, how do I help, you know, these
Mhm,
communities or help these people? Because we're always trying to solve a problem with the seller or whatever the case may be. But you know, I really admire people that are like buying the block and changing the community and giving back to the community. So you know, I'm trying to be that. And that's why I'm in the markets that I'm in, because I lived in those markets and
mm,
I want to give back to those markets. And that's part of my rapport with, you know, sellers is that, hey, I lived in Kansas City, I know how it is there, I want to give back to that community,
right.
and that's why I'm buying these homes and renovating them, and you know, giving people a place to live that's, you know, a nicer, not just a rundown home, right? So
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think, um, you mentioned, like, how your motivations change, and your motivation's gonna change. Like, that's the
hmm
beauty of, like, being an entrepreneur or in real estate, like, there's no ceiling,
hmm
right? Like, usually once you're excuse me, when you're in a job, um, there is a ceiling, right? You can't be maybe you can be CEO, but, like, it's a little bit more difficult climbing the corporate ladder, but with being starting your own business, there really is no ceiling. Either
hmm
you're breaking boundaries because it's never been there, or you're revolutionizing the industry. So I
hmm
felt for me at least too is I'm like, I can make an actual difference. And I'm making a difference in my current job. Like, don't get me wrong.
Mhm.
The products that my team develops helps small nonprofits who are kind of the forgotten ones. We always
Mhm.
think like of the bigger nonprofits, but you
Sure.
think about these mom and pop nonprofits, like one or two people managing everything. They don't know where to start either. So
Mhm.
we're solving a problem there. But kind of going into like solving problems, like that's kind of another language change that in my company we've kind of changed. It's like, no, we don't solve problems, we create solutions. Kind
Mm.
of like,
I
switching
love
the
that.
mindset when it comes to that is like, yes, there's going to be problems, but what solutions do we have? No more band-aids. Is that was something we were doing, is like putting band-aid fixes because it's easy. It's like,
Mhm.
no, what solutions can we that we implement, will that make a difference in 2 or 3 years? Sometimes no, sometimes you have to come up with new solutions, but I really like that kind of switch of mindset and language of like,
Mhm.
no, we're here to create simple solutions, that will, take us further.
Yeah.
So I think when I think knowledge really is power. This is what we
Mhm.
talk about. So the more I was equipped with like the real estate strategies, and I mean, and we're just skimming the surface,
Of course.
of like, our goals is to get into these rooms, get into masterminds and really learn the ins and outs. But once I kind of got a peek of like the power of real estate, I was like, oh wow, like kind of like what you were saying, like I can do a lot. I can
Mhm.
I can develop communities. And this is something growing up in the Bay Area too. Like I've seen homelessness, even like when I
Mhm.
lived down in
It's big.
Oakland, not a couple years ago, like there's homeless encampments everywhere. It had increased in the last like 5 years. And so to see that, I mean, now I have a different lens. I was always like, oh, I wish the government, or I wish we
Right.
passed more things,
Right.
for the homeless, and ended up not, being the case. Just learned like you can't rely on the government in many senses. Like you have to kind of have that power to be like, no, I want to stop to this. Like people deserve better
Mhm.
mental health. So maybe creating mental health organizations to help. I don't know, whatever the case may be. But I have the power to develop things, develop affordable housing communities, like you talked about.
Right.
So I think once you kind of have a vision aligned of like how you want to see it, maybe your vision doesn't change, but like
Mhm.
how you get to that vision may change because, like you said,
Right.
you have to pivot. But I think not having a ceiling, I think there's something special about that. Is like you can do literally anything,
Yeah.
and if you
Yeah.
fail, I mean, how many of us have failed? Like to be scared to fail in a business, like you've failed at a job, right? Like
Mhm. Yeah.
maybe projects didn't go as you planned, and how did you handle that?
Right.
You learn from it if it's done the right way,
Yeah.
because I
And you
know
didn't get fired, then
experience
you're
too,
good.
right? If you didn't get fired or
Right.
be talked down to,
Mhm.
that's never fun either. But okay, well, what did I learn from this, and what will I not do next time?
Right.
So it's the same thing with business.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's and I've had almost every job you could think of, like, so people thinking that they can't um you know be an entrepreneur because they're only, they might be a they work for a cleaning service, or they, may have, a low paying job or whatever the case may be. It's not the case. Like, I remember growing up and my mom would she would have trash service and a cleaning service for companies, right? So she would
Mm,
go in and clean the offices and then take out the trash and all that stuff like that, right? So when I started working in corporate America and I would work late, I would see the same people working, same doing the same thing. So I always
mhm,
respected them. I always, you know, um, asked them how they were doing. Just treated them just like any other employee that I work with in the
right.
company, right? And so I remember I would help her out during those times, and I'd be like, I'm gonna run one of these companies one time. Like, I want to
Mm,
be able to, you know, because I'm looking at these cubicles and looking at these offices going in and out, and I was like, this is not the life for me. I want to be able to do that. And I always told my mom, I was like,
Love
you're
that.
smart enough to have your own business like this. You can get the
Right.
accounts. Like if I can go to get the accounts. But her mindset was like she couldn't do it. Like she didn't have the
Yeah, we
money
talk
or
ourselves out of it.
yeah. So, but I think she would have done great with that. And it's just instead of getting a hourly rate, she would have gotten huge contracts with these companies
Right.
and stuff. So,
Yeah, because
um,
everyone's always gonna need a cleaning,
yeah.
right? Like a cleaning team, especially in like offices. We had one too, and kind of similar to your mom. My mom, I guess she was probably the more entrepreneurial. Like she had her own like alteration shop,
Mhm.
where she would rent next to like a bridal shop. And she also cleaned houses, so she had different hustles.
Mhm.
She was more of a contractor in that sense, but I remember. When we lived in San Francisco, we would drive probably an hour
Mhm.
east to a really, really nice city called Walnut Creek in California. It's like you have all the like when the Warriors played in Oakland, that's where
Mhm.
all the NBA players lived because they had
Oh,
like just
wow.
huge houses. Um, and I remember she would take us and she would just have us, me and my brother, and we would go to these really huge houses, and
Mhm.
I remember being like, "Wow, like, this is so big," and they had a pantry with all the snacks and all
Oh,
the
wow.
food that you any food that you wanted, and I remember being like, "Can we eat the food?" Like, yeah, I'm like and I would, like, pick all the
Right.
chocolates and stuff, but that kinda taught me too. I was just like I was like, "Well, we could never." I can't
Mm.
imagine, like, even then, I was just thinking, I was really young. I was probably like 6 or 7 and thinking like, "Whoa, if only we lived here." But I was like, "You must have to be a certain way to live in a house like this." But it is a possibility. If I were to ever, once we close deals and everything like that, I
Mhm.
can live in a house like that. Like,
Yeah,
no
absolutely.
problem. But like being exposed to that early it is humbling in a sense
Yeah.
too, is like
Yeah.
having your parents work. I mean, my dad was a garbage man, so I
Mhm.
always have my very blue collar jobs,
Yeah.
my parents held.
My
My
parents
mom
too.
also took care of you know older elderly people, and so we would
Mhm.
stay over the house during the holidays, and she would be taking care of them. So she was a caregiver too. So like looking back, I was like, oh wow, like my mom did different
Mhm.
hustles, and like why like she didn't turn it really into a business, and her business ended up like she ended up like walking away, 'cause I
Mhm.
don't think she was able to kind of keep up with certain things, especially during like after the recession and stuff.
Mhm.
But it all starts there. Like been we've all interacted with somebody, or somebody in our lives has done something that to show us that they can do it. But
Yeah.
it's always the mindset of like, "Oh, I don't deserve I'm not worthy of this," which
Mhm.
happens a lot in the Black and brown communities,
Yeah.
is we don't think we're worthy of it.
Yeah. And I think it's also, generational and how you grew up too and what you're exposed to and I really growing up, I had a couple, I guess rich dads, you would say, my friends' dads that were entrepreneurs, and I always would just ask them questions. I didn't know that I was going to be an entrepreneur or not. I just
Mhm.
asked them questions on what I did, and he kind of taught me like some etiquette on business and also just etiquette on just I guess the finer things or whatever, because I had no idea. I mean, like,
Mhm.
my parents weren't rich or anything like that, so,
Right.
I always liked going over to their house because it was big and, I was like, "Wow, this is cool," but, I just think, like, when you're growing up and you have that you work different jobs. Even when I was an adult, I worked like 3 jobs, you know? I was
Yeah.
like a shoe salesman, I worked for the airport doing ground crew, I did like rental car service, I was cleaning the cars, and then I was just like working for shoes or whatever the case may be or whatever. I mean, I was working like 4 jobs just to make it, and I
Right.
had a degree. I was like, what's going on, And so, but my mindset was I wanted to get on my feet so I could start my own business. That was the whole thing. And I was able
Mm,
to save enough and have that time. And then I never slept really. The only time I slept during that time was at the airport because I worked the
mm,
night shift and there was only 2 planes coming in
right,
um, in the evening. So that was the only job that allowed you to sleep on the job. So,
right.
because they would warn you when the flight would come in, so you just wake up and then go out there and do it. So, but
Mm.
that was the only time I slept. The rest of the time I was like working towards to start my business, even though I had like 4 jobs or whatever the case may be. So, but
Yeah, you gotta start somewhere.
yeah, you have to start somewhere, and starting over is another aspect of a good motivator, right? And
Right.
if you had started a business or you got laid off from your job, that could be your key to
And
say,
that happened a lot. I know many people during the pandemic, that lost their jobs or couldn't find a job, and then they got into real estate.
yeah,
Just stumbled upon it because they're stuck at home and they don't have a job, so they're like, going through YouTube University, and they either
hmm
come across Chris's YouTube or maybe Max Maxwell, all the
hmm
big dogs of real estate. And then you have wholesaling, something like this is why I love wholesaling and why I still think it's like one of the best
yeah,
exit strategies, really, is
sure,
like because it's all about acquisitions, right?
hmm
So for me too, because I was for reason why I kind of picked wholesaling is I was thinking too, I was like, well, maybe I can buy a house, but that can be
hmm
intimidating too, like
yeah,
going through that process of house hacking, which is great, if you know how to kind of use it. And even
yeah,
if you don't, like, you'll figure it out.
sure,
But I think I was watching somewhere that said like wholesaling is house hacking is now kind of like old news. Like you can still do
mm,
it, but wholesaling is just such a great entry point
hmm
to real estate. There's no risk involved. Of course, you wanna make sure you have all your ducks lined up,
yeah, of
in terms
course,
of, like, your contracts and agreements and stuff, but, like, there's no risk at all. Um, you can get quick money
hmm
on the spot and, like, build an actual business,
hmm
and you can if you're using that money right, you can reinvest it.
yeah,
So,
absolutely,
so for me, I think, uh, starting wholesaling just seemed like really it just made sense. I'm like, "Okay, it's really easy to get in. I don't have to be a realtor. I don't have to get my license. That takes work." I was like, "What's the least amount of resistance to start a
exactly,
business?" And, like, wholesaling just kept coming up. And I was like, "Why aren't more people doing this?" Like, maybe because it's spoken bad about or like,
yeah,
it's labeled, I don't know why. Because when you say, like, a realtor, like, people think of it like, "Oh, yeah, you're this and that, you get commissions." And even that when I, like, talk about, like I was like, "Yeah, I just closed a deal." And they're like, "Oh, what was your commission?" I was like, "Oh, I didn't get a commission." They're like, "Oh, you're
hmm
not an agent?" So I have to explain.
yeah, me too,
These are people that are kind of aware, but I'm like, I had to explain what wholesaling is. And people, yeah, usually are like, "Oh, is that legal?" It's always the
yeah, I
first
know,
question.
I know,
Um, so for me, like, it was a no-brainer in getting started. Now,
hmm
of course, people do different ways, like, it's either house hacking. I say a combo of both, like,
absolutely.
get your chips, while wholesaling, and then use some of that money to house hack if that's what you want, but you don't have to do that.
Yeah,
Some people get into flipping first, some people get into house hacking first. Some people
absolutely.
go straight to development or multifamilies.
Mhm,
I think either way, it doesn't matter as long as there's a vested interest where like you feel passionate about because it's really going to be your value, like your vision
mhm,
and what you're passionate about that's going to keep you going because it's going to get
absolutely.
hard throughout the journey. You're going to fail. I mean, sorry guys, like keep it real, like you're going to fail in your business. You're going to
Mhm,
uh, take 10 steps back. So you really need to have a vision that you can go to
Mhm.
to keep the motivation so that you don't give up.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing.
Mhm.
But it's also just kind of I think people underestimate too getting a mentor because
Yeah.
that's kind of one of my goals this year. Because you can do it on your own, it's just going to take you a little bit
Yeah.
longer to get
Yeah.
there. But if you can navigate it with somebody, or if somebody can navigate you through the trenches, you'll get
Mhm.
there much quicker. Now you
Yeah.
have to invest in yourself. It costs money to get a mentor,
Mhm.
but it's totally worth it if you want to take your business to the next level. So that's always a something um to have right off the bat is just somebody that's going to guide you. And it all depends. Like some people are able to do it without it to start off with, but some people may need some, holding some hands and stuff. So something to keep in mind when it comes to that.
Right, right. And I think that was the one of the questions I was going to ask you is like what did you learn? What's one thing that you can tell people that you learned from starting your business? And since this was your first business that you started, like that was, and I think you kind of answered that a little bit.
Yeah, I think just getting started,
Yeah.
just that's it, taking action.
Mhm.
But I've learned I think I had it all in my head like it was a big deal.
Mhm.
But it's really not. Like once you get started and you kind of and for me it took a little bit longer to get kind of going because I really didn't know what I was doing and I was kind of just doing things willy-nilly. There wasn't really a structure to it. Um, so I would say just things that I've learned is really have like a accountability group. I think that
Mhm.
really was the biggest thing that
Yeah.
I think was a game changer for me is having a supportive team that I can go to. I can ask questions. This is why, like, if you're starting a business and you kind of can vet somebody who maybe has a course or has a group, like I would totally invest in that. So if you're looking into wholesaling, um, Chris's group is a great entry point into like wholesaling. But if you want to get
Mhm.
into flipping, there's probably maybe several groups, but you want to make sure you vet them out. So the biggest thing is like a support system and not taking myself too serious, not being so hard on myself. Because
Mhm.
again, instant gratification.
Right.
I was expecting I had to be a certain way or be a certain level of success because maybe other people were. Um, but no, just trust your journey and the rest will follow. Just be consistent in what you have to do and the rest you'll figure it out. Like ask for
Yeah.
help too. You can't be too shy if you don't, if you don't ask for help,
Yeah.
you're not going to
Absolutely.
get anywhere.
Yeah, I love that too. I think the community is the biggest thing for me because, in all the businesses that I have started, it's been lonely, right? There's just
Mm,
you kind of starting it, and you trying to figure it out. There's no, mentor there to help you out, or excuse me. And so it's a situation where within this industry, there's a community of people that is going to help you out. And, we're part of a program, but at the same time, we've built relationships and friendships to where like they know exactly what you're going through starting this business, right?
right.
And when you do start something outside of the norm, it can get lonely. So build a community, get with other founders. It doesn't mean that you have to get with, people that are in the same industry because, you may feel
Mm,
like there was a competition, but get with other
mm,
founders that started other businesses too, because you have something in common because you guys started a business, right?
right.
So they may tell you something more about accounting and how you can save on that, or how to treat your employees, or build, a culture around your company. So there's other
Right.
aspects of the business that you can learn from other founders. So that's what we mean by building a community, like so you're
I love
not
that.
alone, right? And I think that's for me has been big with starting, the real estate side is that there is a community around you that will support you, and and I don't mean the community that is your friends or your family because they might not believe 100% that you can do this or back you. They may say they are,
Be
but they're not in
skeptical.
the yeah, they're not in the trenches with you, right? So the people that you surround yourself have gone through it or are going through it, so they understand you better, right? So I
Right.
think that's one of the biggest keys, and when you're starting the business, is surround yourself with other like-minded people and network with those, and have a community.
Yeah, I love that. I think that in and of itself is something I learned in like the relationships you
Mhm.
build. And it's this industry, and I'm sure any business, it's all networking. And that's
Mhm.
something, we learned you've done it really well. And then going down to LA last weekend, we were able to somehow by putting ourselves out there, we're able to network with some
Mhm.
people doing like huge things in the real estate industry, and
Absolutely.
just connecting with them and just being at the right place at the right time. And if you're, putting that out there, it's a matter of time that you're gonna
Yeah.
do that. So I think that's huge. And I also believe in surrounding yourself with people who are smarter than you. I think we
Mhm.
hear that all
Yeah.
the time. If you're the smartest person in the room, get out of that room
Yeah.
because you're not gonna grow. It may feel nice to like be the most knowledgeable one, but if nobody's like pushing me or
Mhm.
teaching me something new, then it's been cool. Like we can hang out,
Mhm.
next year. First, like I think it's also having that vulnerability, like that you don't know. I think people do that a lot where they think they have to know everything. You
Right.
don't. So
Right.
that's also another learning lesson from just creating a business is like you don't have to know it all. You don't have to do it all yourself. Either get a
Mhm.
mentor or a community that'll kind of walk you through and surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. That's
Yeah,
it.
that's awesome. So I think one last question. We're getting closer to the end. So hey guys, don't forget to subscribe. Hit that
Yeah,
like button.
subscribe, hit those
And
reminders.
reminders. Exactly. One last question is that what's your next business venture, or what are you going to do to help expand your current business?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've touched upon this a little bit. I at first
Yeah.
was like, okay, I want to do a VA business
Mhm.
because there's a need in that, but like, there's so many people doing it and they do it really well. I kind of learned. I'm like, okay, I don't really have a vested interest. So that's always a good way to filter out bad ideas,
Sure.
too. Is like, okay, am I really passionate about this?
Mhm.
If I'm not, okay, it's probably not worth investing my time in it.
Mhm.
But for me, this podcast is definitely something I want to take to the next level.
Mhm.
And creating a multifamily, or
Mm.
starting a multifamily venture
Mhm.
business, and you and I and a few others are working towards that.
Mhm.
Um, so I think starting off with those, I think you can't put too much on your plate, otherwise you can't focus on one thing, especially as when you're in a building phase.
Yeah,
Like there's
absolutely.
what I've learned too is like, or from what I've heard people that have run several business, once you've kind of solidified one business, you can like replicate that
Yes,
structure into other
exactly.
businesses, especially if it's within the same like real estate industry. So if like I have my acquisitions and dispositions flow and like administrative tasks, like I can copy that over.
Mhm.
So you don't have to reinvent the wheel when it comes to that. So I'm sure there's going to be more development for sure.
Mhm.
And I think I've talked about this with you too, is like creating my own community.
Mm.
And just for me, to be quite like frank with real estate industry, it is a male dominated
Yep.
industry.
Yeah.
uh the women are the minority, and
Mhm.
especially women of color too.
Yeah, absolutely.
um and for me as well, as me being part of the LGBTQIA, I'm like I gotta keep up with all the
The acronym, yeah,
acronyms.
yeah.
But for me, I've seen the need there. Like there's not really, not only is it of a male dominated industry, it's also a heteronormative, meaning like
Mm.
male, female, male, like, but being from California and everybody has their own insights, but like the trans community, what about the gay, the lesbian
Sure.
community that are out there? There's not really anything for that.
Right,
And
right.
I want to create a safe space for people to feel like they can be themselves and learn at the same time.
Mm.
So that may be something I think I'm a kind of start brainstorming into how to create that community um, related to real estate, or, still kind of debating how I want to go about that. But, my vested interest is in real estate. I love real estate because there's so many things you could do.
Yeah, me too.
So just creating safe communities for people who are, I don't want to say like outcasted, but like, they're kind of, they're not thought about. Because it's more than that. And that I feel like that's what kind of makes me different too, is like I'm not like your typical anybody. I stand out. Um, and I think it's important, to put
Yeah,
these communities out there. So
it's so important. I
yeah.
love that.
But
I love
yeah,
that.
what about you?
Um, like you said, I'm expanding on the real estate side. My one of my goals this year's was like multiple streams of revenue coming in. So, like you said, the podcast, want to grow that and double down on that. And then also, multifamily, we're also working together on that
Mhm,
aspect as well too. But also, having putting out the knowledge out there and doing um, more outreach, I guess, on how I can get in some of these rooms with affordable housing and these organizations, and see if I can be a part of those, and how I can take the right steps on making a difference and what that looks like in the future. So
I
I
love
think
that.
just getting my feet wet into that and seeing how I can work in that space, because that's like my ultimate goal is to
Mhm,
get into that. But I have people coming to me, or calling me about different, I guess, real estate ventures, and
mhm,
different ideas, or like even finance opportunities within like trucking or something like that.
mhm,
So maybe down the line I can see more having a financial like fund for people that need short-term transitional funds or something like that within real
mm,
estate, or for their business, right? So just being part of the finance side, but that's kind of down the road a little bit, but I can foresee me going in that direction, because right now it's hard to find like the right transitional or transactional funds for different opportunities like
right.
real estate, and a lot of people don't qualify for certain things, so there might be like a sweet spot there. So
I love it. Yeah, it's again just kind of finding a need. And
hmm
yeah, I've also learned, like, of course we want to get in these rooms to learn, but sometimes you got to make your own room if
mm,
if it's not as accessible.
I love
Because
that. Yeah,
there's sometimes it's this like um politics involved of like,
sure.
oh, you have to know this person, you have to look a certain way. And like sometimes, you just create your own group. Like I know many women who have created many other groups as well, that
hmm
they were kind of getting the hand of like, no, like, coming up with excuses why they can't be it. So,
hmm
if you don't see it, if you're having trouble getting in those rooms, create your own rooms.
yeah,
Find other people that um that kind of fit that mold
sure.
that you're looking for. And yeah, create those communities. Doesn't hurt.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
um Can't
Yeah.
believe it's another hour already.
I know.
I mean, it's amazing. So I love it. I love it.
Cool. Yeah, I appreciate you guys for joining us. I hope you enjoyed, got some value as always. And as I mentioned, drop in the comments like some sort of topics that you would like us to talk
Mhm.
about. We're more than welcome, or if there's certain guests or anything for I think the next couple weeks, we'll be having
Yeah.
some guests. I think next week I have them on my calendar here. We have Ty and Mike.
Yeah, Ty and
They're
Mike.
out in Atlanta. I think he goes by I think Real Estate Ty or something like that.
Mhm.
But he's well known out in Atlanta. Partner up with his got his boy Mike.
Mhm.
And they're crushing it. So that'll be a really, really fun conversation next week. But guys, yeah, besides that, type in some topics that you'd like us to chat about. Don't forget to follow us, Real
Mhm.
Estate Gladia here, Mr. Tim REI.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I always get my directions mixed up.
I know, me too.
And get underscore the bag podcast on IG as well. We'll make sure to include those in the notes. But always appreciate your guys' support. Don't forget to hit those reminders. But have a great day
Have
and
a great
let's
day.
get it.
All right, see y'all next week.
Peace.